Good morning. My name is Barbara Fuller, and as Chair of the Board, I welcome you to this May 21st, 2024 working session of the Washtenaw County Board of Road Commissioners. Our office coordinator, Aaron Smith, will describe how our meetings operate, how to access the agenda packet, and how people may participate remotely. Aaron.
Thanks, Chair Fuller. There are multiple ways to make public comment during today's working session, whether you're joining us in person or virtually. If you're here in person and would like to make comment, please fill out the sign-in sheet now. If you're joining us virtually, we will ask you to raise your hand at the appropriate time in the agenda. If you're joining us virtually and are experiencing technical issues with audio or video during the meeting, submit a comment in the chat feature and our communications manager will help you troubleshoot. If you would like closed captioning during the meeting, you will have to manually change your settings, click on the captions button and select show captions. The audio and video of this meeting is being recorded and a link to the recording will be posted to our website in the next few days. There are printed copies of today's meeting agenda on the table near the front door, and it is also posted on our website. And now I'll turn it back over to Chair Fuller.
Thanks, Aaron. I now call this May 21st working session meeting to order and ask Aaron to call the roll.
Chair Barb Fuller.
Present.
Vice Chair Rod Green.
Here.
Commissioner Gloria Yamas.
Here.
Commissioner Joanne McCollum will be joining us a little bit later in this meeting. And then Commissioner Jeff Smers.
Here.
And then the following directors are in attendance. Managing Director Matt Washtenaw, Assistant Director of Engineering Aaron Burkholz, Director of Operations Adam Leip, and Director of Finance and IT Dan Ackerman.
Thank you. At this point, we will move on to public comment. Hang on. This is the time set aside on the agenda to receive comments from the public. This is not intended to be a period for dialogue. Each person will be allotted 3 minutes to address the board. Aaron will explain how people may be recognized to offer comments.
Thanks, Chair Fuller. Since this is a hybrid meeting with both in-person and virtual attendees, we will take turns between those attending in person and virtually. For virtual attendees, we have provided some instructions on the screen on how to participate and make public comment. If you're attending this meeting virtually and would like to make comment, please raise your hand now. If you dialed into the meeting from your phone, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. Our communications manager will unmute virtual participants with raised hands one at a time and will announce your username or last 4 digits of your phone number when it is your turn to speak. And then please share your name and address before beginning your comments. And then for our in-person attendees, we will start with those who signed up on the sign-in sheet as you walked in. If you didn't sign in, you're still welcome to make comment. Our communications manager will help you, will notify you when it is your turn.
Very good. Thank you. At this point in time, we will move on into our agenda for this working session, and I will turn it over to our managing director, Mr. Washtenaw.
Good morning, commissioners. And I'm going to quickly turn it over to our HR manager, Nicole Peterson, who's going to give an update, an overview on several areas in HR. Nicole?
Morning, Nicole Peterson, HR manager. So I came up with a variety of topics that I would like to share with the board today, things that are important within our department. So we'll go over the modification factor in regards to workers' compensation, employee engagement, and our relationship with Gallup, where our recruiting efforts are at this time. And then I will finish up with information that I presented at the County Road Association conference regarding our onboarding processes. Great. So you may hear us talk about our mod factor when we're here at work. It may get published within Matt's weekly newsletter. We've had celebrations in the past when we had finally gotten below a 1.0. So what does that mean in regards to us? Well, a mod factor is a multiplier that can either increase or decrease our premium based on our performance and history. So it's calculated by dividing our actual losses by the expected losses, and the actual losses include like the number of claims we had, what those costs were. They go back and review our premiums from the last 3 years. So it's always this like 3-year rolling calendar that we have. And with that mod factor, you kind of start at the 1, and if we're above the 1, let's say we're 1.25, we're paying 25% more than the average other organizations in a similar job classification as us. And so, obviously, the goal is to be at 1 or below. Because when we are below that 1, it's actually almost like we're getting a discount for having a safer workplace. I did put together a chart to show how we have decreased that mod factor in our organization over the years. The Mackinac Group and CRASIF, they work, which is our loss control for workers' compensation. Their years are July 1st to June 30th, so that's how their calendars roll. And so you can see we've had some really good points where that first time in 2017 to 2018 that we finally fell below 1 had a little bit of an increase, and then we've continued to decline over the last 3 years. So it's really exciting for us. We've been on the honor roll with CRASIF for those years when we've been below 1.0, and the managing directors, whoever that's been at the time, has done rewards for employees, whether it was we got released early on a day or a day off before a holiday started, or added money towards safety apparel 1 year. It just depends on who the manager was at that time and what that decision was made.
Nicole, I have a question.
Yeah,
What year did Craig Timmer join us?
he just
I
had
wanted to
his
look at this.
2-year in April of this year. So he's been on board for 2 years. He started in April of 2022.
Okay, thank you.
So really, how do we influence that mod factor? That does I'll go back to safety, providing the proper training and really managing those workplace injuries. We do try to accommodate and do a return to work with restrictions as often as we're able to. Trying to get employees back healthy as quickly as possible. Getting started right into maybe physical therapy and follow-up appointments that they need. And you'd be surprised how much employees know about mod factor because we talk about it so much and they know the importance of it. I'm gonna, any questions on mod factor before I move on? Okay, so employee engagement, we have this 3-year commitment working with the Gallup. Using them to better understand employee engagement and satisfaction here at the Road Commission. Gallup is a nationally known organization that we had vetted prior to making the commitment with them. So we just finished our 2nd year with our survey, went out to employees in April. Last year, we had a 75% participation rate, and this year we were up to 80%, so that increase is good. We've just started reviewing results, and we'll start to have meetings with Gallup and a consultant they use to be able to distribute feedback and numbers to senior leadership and others, and then work our way down to supervisors. And really what happens as we start to get that information from Gallup is we work with supervisors on them having individual meetings with their crews, because that's where the information came from, and really to make goals and dial down on objectives that they have for their group. It really just spurs open conversation, gets a feel for are they getting enough appreciation? How do they feel about the organization? Do they feel cared about? Do they have the resources that they need to do their job?
Commissioner Green.
So, what was the overall response to these questions? Like, their satisfaction with their job and their passion and
Last
That's
year's,
job.
what had came back was, We were lower in areas of where employees felt they had the resources to do their job,
Okay.
but high in recognition. So it seems to be that it's trending that same way this year because we just got like preliminary results released to senior leadership, and that would just be the 4 main directors and myself. And then we have upcoming meetings to further dive into those the heat maps and to break it down further into each groups because we kind of saw the overall picture of the organization. So we're still too early to be able to tell you how this last year looks, but the initial information that we're receiving looks very similar to last year. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Commissioner Yamas.
So, the survey that was taken in 2023, I thought we were going to see the results or hear about the results. And that's not true. We're not going to hear that. What happened?
Like you would like us to present or,
Yeah, I thought there was going to be a presentation, not that, I thought that was what was going to happen.
okay,
And I know that it's a lot of information, but, I like that you just told us where it was or, how it's driving the organization and the changes that are going to be made.
okay,
I can, one thing that we can do, in looking at this year's results, what we can do is present on where we were in 23, where we're at in 24. That's something that we can take up probably at another working session if the board, that's a desire to delve into. I'd be happy to do that. Apologize if those results weren't shared previously. Was performed about a year ago. So we did get the results. What's really nice about this Gallup is we're able to not only see the overview as an organization, but look at each department and then even crews within the department and try and address concerns. It really, in my mind, it forces us to have those conversations, to have a dialogue with employees and to get that valuable feedback. So I'm excited to go through the process once again. In my plan, after supervisors have had a opportunity to sit down with their crews and discuss results, is to make the rounds myself with the department head and make sure that I hear directly from the crews regarding the survey as well. So, but happy to share that at a future working session meeting. I can work with the chair to look at what meeting would be appropriate. And Nicole and I can come back with that.
Just to be clear, Commissioner Yamas, on what you're looking for, I assume you're not looking for pinpointing a department, someone within a department, and what is it?
No.
What's their burr under their saddle, right? You're
No.
looking for an overview of what are the concerns in a broad sense.
You're right. And how, is this an effective tool for our organization, how it's working? Because you guys were so excited to get it done. So I was excited to see and hear how it's worked,
And what we're doing in response to the feedback that we're getting, right? And this is describe the anonymity of the responses and how that's protected, please.
sure. So actually you don't, so I break everybody out in a spreadsheet that goes to Gallup. So it goes from top down. So like Matt would get a report for all the organization, and then Adam would get, it follows like the org chart down.
Mhm.
But a supervisor does not receive results unless they've had at least 4 or more respond. So for myself, I have 2 people that report to me. I'm not going to get feedback or for my 2 people because it would be too identifiable.
Right.
But if you roll us up into administration with Dan's group and communications, because communications wouldn't have enough either, then you can get an overview of just at least administration and not be able to trickle it down to an individual.
Great. Yeah.
But they are all anonymous responses.
They are, yes.
Yeah, I do remember that nobody is attached to their response.
Right. Anything else, Commissioner Green? I'm sorry, were you finished?
Right.
Okay.
So for example, number 2, how committed we are to the organization's goals? What was the response to that? I mean, are we very committed? somewhat committed?
I would encourage that we hold off and not ask you to try and retrieve this from memory.
Yeah,
If you can put together a response for us.
yeah, because
future
that,
work
yes, I can break down, because it comes from 12 questions. And actually, this year, two of our strongest questions, one was if you feel like you receive recognition from work, and then do you have a best friend at work? Which sounds like a silly question, like, do I have a best friend at work? But there is science behind that, on that question, and breaking it down, that I would be happy to, relay and talk about, that Gallup's talked in depth with us about as well.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So, and also in participating in Gallup, not just doing the survey, but they provide meetings with us as leadership and supervisors. They have a wealth of information in their website, things for leadership, like I said, doing action items for us, for our teams, webinars. It's been a really good resource, an added resource to the tools that we already have here.
Nicole?
Yep.
Didn't we do an employee survey previously? It's been a
On our
while.
own, we had done one, maybe some of the first years that Emily Kaiser was here.
Okay, okay.
So that's been a while.
Was it done by Gallup?
No,
So we can't compare.
no. The
What
only
we
thing
learned.
we can compare is last year's Gallup to this year's.
Right.
Gallup.
Right, okay.
So I'll move on to recruiting, which we talk about annually, and just kind of reviewing the different ways that we continue to advertise. So still using, employment websites. Our main two would be LinkedIn and Indeed. Employee referrals continues to be a high source for us of people referring individuals, especially with the new CDL program that we have. And so learning that we have labor positions if they feel they have somebody as a fit. We still continue to use social media for our recruitment, attending networking events and conferences. We had hired Kevin, our project manager, back in December. He had found us through, I believe it was Indeed, but when we were going through that process, a lot of civil engineers and people that we have on staff here are reaching out to past contacts or organizations that they belong to and associations, and being able to try to drum up interest. Hey, do you know somebody that's looking for this? Again, going back to professional associations and then our university and college recruiting. A change that we recently made in the department is to start doing blind recruiting. So this is also known as like anonymous recruiting or de-identified recruiting. And it's really aimed at removing all the personally identifiable information from job applications and resumes before they are reviewed by the hiring managers. So what we are doing is we don't have the ability in WorkBright that we've used successfully and continuously for our recruiting on the application process to have that software automatically block everything out for us. And oftentimes employees or potential employees, candidates are attaching their resume, so it's going to have all that information on it. But we in HR are taking that information and blocking it and removing it from the application and the resume prior to forwarding to the hiring managers that are going to screen the applications and choose who they would like to select for an interview.
Commissioner Green?
What type of screening takes place when a person has a criminal record?
We do not have a policy that would that disqualifies an employee that has a criminal record.
Okay.
That would be an independent judgment call that we in HR make. If somebody, you know, I always use the example, if you have a history of forged checks or embezzlement, I'm not going to hire you for a position in finance, right? But we have had people with pasts employed here previously. And so that's not a disqualifier. It would just be something that we consider on a case by case basis.
Thank you.
So you do background checks, I take it, as part of the
Well,
screening process?
so on the application, there is a question where they need to identify if they have a criminal history. After that, as they move through the process, yes, then in the background check, if they're going to have an offer extended to them, we would find out more through that background check.
Yes.
Anything? Okay,
Okay, so, you know, sticking with, as we say, like with the blind recruiting, again, trying to keep those, all that personally identifiable information out for the hiring managers. We, do a standardized screening criteria, you know, so do they have this, and this, what we're looking for, whether it's the solid work history, the minimum education requirements, or the driver requirements. And then so that that's consistent among all applicants. And then we always have performed structured interviews, same as how we had done for managing director. We have predetermined questions and a rating system for candidates. And then go from there. Any questions on recruiting before I move to onboarding?
you referred to the hiring manager.
So
Who's
like,
that? But,
whatever the department is.
okay.
So if right now we have a position posted internally for engineering technician, I would refer to Mark McCullough as the hiring manager in that. It reports to
Okay.
his department.
I didn't know if it was a person that was, so
No, it's for whatever the vacancy reports to.
Commissioner McCollum.
Yes, Nicole, I was wondering about Michigan Works. I know I brought it up before, but they have changed. They have a new building. I went to the open house, last week. I have to think what day it is. And it was awesome. It just seems like the setup seems much better, more things are clear. I mean, not that it wasn't before, but it just seems like there's better opportunity for people to apply and get positions that fit them.
Yeah, and we do use, so they have an online posting board as well that go, My Talent, that goes through the entire state that we post on. So what Michigan Works is doing is really assisting those candidates on developing their resume, getting it uploaded online, assisting them in being able to apply for jobs like ours that are posted on their online board.
Thank you. All right.
Okay. All right, so I will touch and finish up on onboarding, which really is that process after we've found that ideal candidate and they start with us. So as I said, I had presented this at in March at CRA, so I will just go through this a little bit quickly. But onboarding really is that it's beyond just that initial first day where you're filling out your I-9 and W-4 and your tax forms and signing off that you received said policies. We are using this opportunity to build a relationship where we can have loyalty and hope that they stay for a long time with us. It really is some of our first impression with employees. So there's 5 C's of onboarding. So we have the first compliance, that is doing that paperwork, going over policies, kind of the dry things. Clarification, where we're going to define the roles and expectations of the employee and the department. And I'll talk about further what we do here with staff and the meetings that they have with new hires. Culture, really, what is WCRC? What do we stand for? What do we do? For the connection, so we do introductions to management, coworkers, tour of the building, and other relevant staff, and then a check back. So we do follow-ups. There are ticklers on many of our calendars to, because we don't want an employee to feel like they start on their first day and then they never see HR again, or they don't see the director of operations or the managing director, and we become just these people in the main office.
How long does that onboarding, those 5 steps, would you say?
Well,
What's involved?
so.
Or maybe the first 4, check back, obviously. is
Yeah,
ongoing.
so I have the schedule here, but essentially it is that first week.
Okay.
So we have a system where employees are able to complete the paperwork prior to starting. That is a part of our work by our recruiting process. So payroll's already able to have forms downloaded, HR is able to start getting the required information we need, and then follow up with them before they start as reminders of what they may be missing. And, it's stressful and it's overwhelming on your first day. So to get some of that paperwork out of the way, and maybe sometimes people, want to ask their spouse, do we do 0 or 1? Like, what do I want to claim, so that you don't have to feel like you're taking homework home and bringing it back and that you're unprepared. So we get that out of the way, and there's a lot of meetings and videos and PowerPoint presentations and introductions, and then days with the new supervisor showing them around in your workspace and that sort of thing. So I would definitely say the first 2 to 3 days at least. So that is my next slide. How long should it last?
I also want,
Yeah.
this whole thing assumes someone has access to a computer and an internet connection.
Yes.
What if somebody doesn't?
Well,
Does that
everything is-
disqualify them?
No, everything is printable. We've had,
Okay.
even if a candidate comes in to the front desk, we print an application for them and they can complete it and submit it that way. So
I'm
we
just-
would just print, we haven't come across anybody, but we have laptops, floater laptops here. We would be able to work through the paperwork with them here on site. So I think there's a lot of ways we'd be able to accommodate that, but that wouldn't disqualify anybody from being here.
You know where I'm going with this. Is somebody not even going to be eligible because they don't connect?
No, it's not a requirement of the job, so we can make accommodations for that by printing off everything that they need.
And I will say our website and work site can be accessed with a mobile phone. So cell phone
Ah.
is very easy way, and a lot of people can use their cell phone to just log in. And I would say the majority of our applicants all have a cell phone.
Commissioner Smers.
Just to kind of circle back with something Commissioner said about Michigan Works. I know that they will have someone that can help someone that's not online. They have the resources and quite often someone to sit with them and help them fill out this information if they don't know how to do it. So I've worked with Michigan Works quite a
Okay.
bit for the last few years, and they've done a really, really good job of upgrading a lot of things in their system as well.
Commissioner Green? No, I just know even the healthcare choices, to me, I look at, it's like, oh, man.
Luckily, we only have 2. You only have to choose between 2.
Oh, Yeah.
So the length of onboarding for what we describe, really, that lasts throughout your first year. I think that anytime an employee encounters something for the first time, they're still really in that onboarding orientation process. So we may do open enrollment every year, but if they started in July and then they come up to October, this is their first time. So there's gonna need to be assistance because it's new to them.
If I could just add to that, when I meet with employees that are coming to our organization, our work that we do, it takes a full year to learn all that we do. And I stress to them, be patient, understand that everything is seasonal and it will take a full year to really understand your job. And so it does take a while to learn the job. And then a few years to get really good at it. So this is a big commitment and asks lots of questions. So that's one thing that I think we as supervisors all need to be aware of, that it does take a long time to learn that particular job, whatever job you're in, because we are so seasonal.
I also want to compliment you because I heard good things about your presentation at the highway conference.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So who is responsible for onboarding? It's not just HR. We do the majority, I think, right at the beginning, but it's everyone. It's the HR staff, it's the supervisor, it's the senior leadership, it's coworkers, it's everyone on bringing this person on board and carrying them along in our culture and organization. So how does the process go? We have, from the start, if we're going to make an offer and that is accepted, would they go to Concentra for their drug screen and physical? I talked about the software WorkBright where they're able to fill out and complete their forms. They receive a welcome to the team card in the mail from us. They receive communication about the first day details. So that's going to have your start time, where to go, what should I wear, what do I do about lunch? Here we give them key phone numbers and email contacts so that they feel prepared, a list of documents they should bring, and then we also give them the schedule and expectations for the week. And then we send out an email to the organization announcing the new hire. And once they get in on their first day, we take their photo and try to get them up on the slideshow as soon as possible. So that's a familiar face and people aren't wondering who that is that walked down the hall that I don't recognize. So.
Commissioner Green.
Given the legalization of marijuana in Michigan, how does that impact our drug screening process, or does it at all?
So it does not, because our policy for all individuals in the organization is a drug-free policy and marijuana is included. For CDL holders, because marijuana is not legal federally, they have to follow the federal guidelines. So no matter what, even if we allowed it, they would still not be allowed.
Okay.
So
Emphasizing that's for everybody,
it is for everyone. Yeah,
even the people
The
who
non-drug,
don't drive anything.
right.
yes, that's correct. So after that,
I'm sorry, Commissioner
I
Yamas.
just have one question that led to another one. So is drug screening part of the job process?
yes, the pre-hire, when you go for that physical. So they are doing their health, if, let's say we're hiring a driver, they're going to do a health performance evaluation, which we had worked with Concentra, where it's not just a physical, can you touch your toes? Can you, how's your back? How's your hearing? We worked with Adam Lape at Concentra with their physical therapy team on creating tasks to mimic what employees do, to be sure that they can also complete tasks, because being able to lift the shovel with a 45 or maybe a 40-pound sandbag is different than, just being able to deadlift the 100 pounds that we have as a general requirement.
Commissioner Green.
So are you raising an excellent point as it relates to differences in physical capacity?
Mhm.
What accommodations do we make to make sure that equity is achieved? If you have, say, a woman who can't lift that, or what
So.
allowances do we make, if any at all?
Okay, so, well, one, it is a requirement of the job that they would have to pass that the physical
Of that particular.
of that particular job. So we have removed from our job ad the 100-pound requirement or I should say, so when you fill out our application online for a truck driver, we had, do you believe can you lift 100 pounds or more? Okay. And you would click yes or no. We have removed that because I'm not sure everybody can judge whether they can or not. So we're going to have people go through the screening process, and then we'll let them determine in the physical if they can lift the 100 pounds or not. It is still in the job description on the job posting as a requirement, but we're not asking that question beforehand. We'll let that play out through the application process. Because of the jobs that we do, it is a requirement. We've scrutinized that many times over the years, and what the jobs that they're performing and what they're lifting, it just, there's no decreasing that. And it wouldn't be fair to have someone that can't perform the minimum requirements of the job, because that would require others to have to pick that up for them.
Nicole, there were female employees that went through that process and it was achievable, for some, weren't there some?
Yes, we've had females in the past.
Yeah,
that
so it's
lift.
not as if that's an unachievable thing.
Commissioner Yamas?
So as far as ADA, us having to adhere to ADA, as long as somebody can achieve that,
Yeah,
are there any, not so much gender, but those that may come in with a handicap or some
Physical
disabilities, some
challenges, yeah.
physical challenges?
yeah, as long as they can pass the, that they can meet the minimum qualifications on our physical requirements.
Particularly in our operations department, it is a physical job.
Yeah.
And we do require that of our employees. That's why we have the pre-employment test.
Right.
There are other jobs at the road commission that don't require that physical test in the administrations or engineering departments. But we need that physical ability to go do the work. Absolutely.
And we had a period of time, did we not, where we looked very closely at what the actual demands of a position
Yeah.
were and shaped the drug screen and the physical for those positions.
We actually, so we had, I want to say it was from Adam, do you remember?
Thank you, Adam.
Adam's twitchy, he needs to say something.
Was it Myosha or, yeah,
Yeah, so Adam Lape, Director of Operations, yeah, sorry to be.
That's all right, that's all right.
Yeah, so they came out with us during COVID, so we had strain gauges, we had multiple kind of tools and items to measure the strain we put on. And so actually got physical measurements. And then most importantly, when we were at Concentra, when we were actually demoing it, Alicia, Nicole, and myself all kind of exercised the test itself to kind of, ensure that adaptability. So that kind of gives us that baseline. So it really is just physical performance at that point. Is someone physically able, regardless sex, size, stature, any of that. So that's kind of how we did that, because it was a simple tool at the time just to compare, different body types that way. So a little more simplified way, but yeah, we truly did get measurements on, for example, a piece of guardrail. I pulled it out of the back of the truck, and then they put a little gauge on my hand while I was pulling it. So that measured like the 45 pounds above the shoulders. And then we held different size boxes, and they actually put weight in them to measure that. So that's how we set our guidelines that way. So we actually tested it prior to holding it as a requirement.
And you passed?
I did, yeah. And so also what it really highlighted was we were able to test that with office personnel, and then myself as a field personnel as well. And then we utilized one of the foremen. Ken was with us for a couple of the tests. So we kind of used about anybody we could that had field experience and some not field experience. So that's how we set that test.
So if someone can't perform the test, is there any opportunity to help them achieve that? Or, is it just, okay, you're gone?
it would be a disqualification, yes.
Really just based, I think, on the safety side of it, because it become unsafe for them if they weren't physically able. We want them to find themselves underneath something that they were trying to lift, or the crew moved and then they physically couldn't hold the weight up. That could be dangerous to in general. So that was how the guidelines were kind of set for us for safety wise.
Now, someone who's like maybe applying for a mechanic's job, they might not need that requirement, correct?
Well, essentially, yes, and the mechanic's job kind of requires, the similar,
Some
if not a
lifting,
bit
but-
more, yeah. Maybe like an office position might have different requirements at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, even for engineering technicians or surveyor, there's still at least a 40, 50 pound requirement due to materials that they have to carry, equipment, I should say, and yeah, testing equipment and stuff like that, so.
And
Okay.
mechanics have to work on some things
Right.
that are really heavy.
Yeah.
Even breaking things loose that might otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, so we have tools to help with that, but it is very similar for a technician and a mechanic as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So getting back to, so if we're hiring somebody and the supervisor, we ask that they call, we give them the contact information, call and welcome the new employee, making sure that if it's a locker, it's all cleaned out, that they're gonna have the PPE, everything all set, that if it's a desk, you know, we're pre-ordering supplies, we have everything ready. Nobody wants to come in and start your first day and have it somebody's old stuff, coffee rings, whatever it is. I mean, we just want to have everything clean and ready to go. I know it sounds simple, but we get so carried away in our everyday jobs and then suddenly the day's here and the person's here. So we definitely have checklists and reminders that we give out to everybody. Definitely have to let IT know so that a laptop or cell phone is pre-ordered and that they're going to be prepared and getting ready for business cards and stuff like that. When they get here on that first morning, we provide a welcome packet that has everything that they're going to need for the day or through the week, additional benefit information, maybe some required notices, the policy acknowledgement forms, payroll calendar, maps, things that they're going to want to know. When do I get paid, right? Then we have the schedule where everybody's going to be meeting. You know, we have Matt and Dan and Tiffany usually start off the morning where they have their own PowerPoint show that they go over on what their departments are and who WCRC is. And then depending on everybody's schedules, but we kind of go through the day and that can give you an idea on what a first day looks like for a new hire.
Commissioner McCollum.
Yes. Nicole, for the yard tour, is that this yard or whatever yard they're going to be working out of?
They typically, because they're here, we typically go over this yard. And then when they're meet with their supervisor, like if they're going off to District 6, that foreman will give them a tour of that yard. But everybody always kind of still ends up here, even if you're reporting somewhere else, because for the fuel island or salt or the shop, or, you know, the storekeeper to get parts or, you know, coming back here, where is everybody? So.
And it's important to also know where HR is in this building, right? That they're welcome in the administration part of the building and it's a great opportunity for me because I typically am not part of the hiring process. So these introductions, I get to know our new employees as well, and they get to know us a little bit. So it's a great onboarding system that Nicole's developed in the HR group over time.
Yeah.
Very
Alicia,
good.
Yes,
This is-
Alicia does.
Alicia.
Great job.
baby. Yeah, for sure. So at
Commissioner Green, I'm sorry.
The orientation for safety, is that on-site, is that for on-site and off-site safety?
Well, do you mean, well, some examples of what Craig would go over would be, like, we talk about, let's say, where we meet for, or, where to go if there's a tornado, where we meet for what our fire evacuation drill is, safety data sheets and labeling of chemicals and how to access that, an overview of the general PPE that they're going to receive and the most, you know, frequent times that you're going to be using that and how to store it and care for that type of PPE. He can tailor it to dependent on the job, because maybe an office job, they're going to talk about more ergonomics in the workplace and some of the options that we have there versus a heavy truck driver, you know, making sure that you're using the 3-point system for getting in and out of the truck and just reviewing safety items like that.
Or from a safety perspective, that's always ongoing, especially with the supervisor.
Right.
And so that's really a longer process because you're learning, there may be forklift training, there may be chainsaw. There's a variety of training that a new employee will have to undergo. Aerial lift is another one. So that those are the ones that get documented. So Craig works with that supervisor to go through that process of documenting and making sure we get our employees all properly trained for the duties that are assigned to them.
Thank you.
I also say the crews do a great job. The senior members looking out for those that are new to the organization. We all know that we've walked in those shoes and we stand upon those that came before us. So I think that mentality is there as well.
They also want to keep that mod factor low, so they.
Maybe have a day off or something. Yes, for sure. So after they've had that full day, they're gonna, a lot of times, sometimes we end early and they're able to go back to their yard and report there for the last hour or two of the day. But no matter what day it is, it really becomes the supervisor's role to introduce them to their team, give them a tour of their yard, show them where to go, answer any questions, and then we start to set up what the expectations are in the job. Try to assign an onboarding buddy, so somebody more senior that they can go to be able to ask questions and feel comfortable if a supervisor or group leader is not around. There's so many things, when you think about what time's break, what time's lunch, what do we usually do for lunch? No, you cannot go through McDonald's drive-through with the big orange truck, make sure that you're bringing your lunch. How do you do timekeeping? Kiosk, do I punch in the morning? How do I enter this? It can be, quite overwhelming. There's a lot to learn. Again, we talked about those ongoing check-ins. So at the end of the first week, Alicia will follow up with them to see how their first week went. At 60-day, I will send stay questions to the supervisor and follow up with them to see how things are going. So stay questions are questions that I don't get back. They're not written down, but really there's something that you ask an employee. There are a set of defined questions, but have you thought about leaving since you've been here, and why? What gets you motivated to come to work every day? What has been most satisfying in your daily job activities? What would you change if you could? So those are the examples of questions where we're just trying to get them to have a dialogue. We get so wrapped up, right, in those first 60 days. Oh, they're here, they're good. They know how to do that basic stuff. But bringing back and trying to create that connection and that dialogue with the employee. And it's not a performance evaluation. There's no wrong answer, but we want to make sure things are going well from the employee's perspective. Rather than, just from the supervisor's perspective on performance. We do a 90-day benefit review with the HR coordinator, Alicia held. So she'll reach out to make sure that they understand, did you get your Blue Cross cards? How is it going? Do you know what you have? And is everything all right with that? I follow up with them at the 6-month mark to see how things are going. And they also receive a performance evaluation from their foreman. And there I have the benefits and effective onboarding, my last slide. And like I said, we're really just trying to build a relationship and loyalty and let them understand the culture that we have here. And have them have an enjoyable career with us.
Any questions or thoughts? Share on this, Commissioner Yamas.
Great job. So much improvement. You've come up with some great ideas.
Thank you.
And sounds like a great job. This 60-day ongoing check-in, because it's always so overwhelming for someone who's just first coming in to try and retain everything.
Thank you.
Great job.
Jeff?
Just
No,
more,
Commissioner Smers, sorry.
I almost did earlier. So more of a statement than a question. I love the mod concept that everyone understands it. What I've seen in the past on jobs is when the entire crew suffers from one accident, it causes people to not want to report it.
Mhm, mhm.
So I think the reward is huge. You have to reward a staff that really worked hard to get that mod high. I just hate to see when it's a drastic punishment to the whole crew for something and people don't want to come forward. So I just hope that everyone's encouraged to come forward and it's not a drastic, punishment for the crew. So it's just my statement that what I've seen in the past where it's worked backwards, and I think it's working well here, but just to throw that out there and keep that in mind.
I absolutely hear what you're saying, and I can appreciate that. I came from, prior to here, I was at an automotive supplier. And remembering having that countdown of like, it's been 100 days. And then if you're that person that got that injury and you're just like, oh my gosh. So I appreciate that. No, it is very supported to, I mean, you report a near miss, you report injury, just even we say, just tell your foreman like, oh, I think I tweaked my back. If they don't feel like going to the clinic, because if it's worse tomorrow, then we'll address it tomorrow. I don't believe we have any issues on anybody not reporting. There is no punishment. The mod factor is an organization as a whole, and sometimes incidents do happen, right? There's no control over that. Well, we try to control it, but sometimes things just happen. So I don't think there's a negative view there in our organization
That's my
for
only
it.
concern.
Yeah,
No,
I don't think they're withholding incidences to try to get that mod factor lower.
I would just follow up by saying, it's the experience average. So we know that we're gonna experience some
Yeah.
issues, whether they be accident related, workers' comp related. So it's just having a performance less than what we thought we would or historically have done, or it's really the total group's experience. So keep in mind, we're self-insured. If you wouldn't mind explaining CRASIF a little bit, isn't that, it's a self-insured pool of road commission. So it's the
Okay.
total experience of the pool on average, and then are we doing better than the rest, a little less? And what's our expected? And that modification, that one is the average, and if anywhere below that, that's where we get a financial benefit, certainly. Because when you look at your premiums, if you do the average, you just pay the premium you were expected. You get a mod factor less than, then you're paying a little less, which is a significant savings.
Safety is the only thing that you're happy when the progressive line goes down. So.
Yeah.
Right. No, and I think our safety committee and looks at all the incidents that get reported. We look for trends. So we're very active in acknowledging that things are going to happen. It's just, are they preventable, or are they things that we can supplement with training and try and just keep everyone safe. That's really the end goal. The end goal is not necessarily get a reward, it's to keep everyone safe and healthy.
I guess my thought is, don't take away the time off or something like that. Do the safety training or something, but still give them the reward because everyone's working hard for it. You don't want to see anyone not report something just because they don't want that countdown to them to be the reason.
Yeah.
And I've worked in the same situation and been in situations where you watch that countdown go from 100 to 0 and you're like, oh, okay, this is not good. So that was my only statement, I guess, that turned into a much longer thing than.
Oh, very fair. No, it's good discussion, good dialogue. So thank you.
Commissioner Green.
There was some reference made to Michigan Works. Do we utilize them as a resource?
As we do, as far as posting
We do.
jobs, yes,
Okay.
on their job board.
I think the onboarding buddy is a wonderful concept. Because there are little things that people learn along the way that aren't in your PowerPoint but have somebody grab you by the shirt, and say, step back a minute, you're a
Yes.
little too close to the edge, or did you look up? Or
Mhm.
I think that's a wonderful concept.
Yeah.
Okay. No other questions, comments for Nicole? Nice work. Nice work.
Very good.
Great job, Nicole. Thank you.
Mr. McDonell, what's next?
Well, while we are on the topic of administration and we talked a little bit about our org chart, I did
Okay.
print out a revised org chart, and it does have a change on. I want to go over that change and a little description of why.
Okay,
So thank you, Tiffany. So it's on your screen as well. We have
boy, like this.
exactly. Recently, I went and Dan and I had a performance evaluation, and Dan Ackerman, our Director of Finance and IT, made a request. And the request was related to the responsibilities of IT. And I'll give you a little history. So back in 2018, yes, so 2018 is a few years ago, whereby we took on a major undertaking whereby essentially we hired a new IT manager, which was Chris Quinter. At the time, we had someone retire, and Dan was asked to take on the role of leading IT for the road commission because there was a lot going on at that period of time. In fact, Chris had mentioned he was hired by Roy Townsend, the managing director, but by the time he came for his onboarding, Cheryl was now the managing director. So as you can imagine, there was a lot of change happening during 2018. Much of that change was being led by Dan and Chris. We were essentially building from the ground up, or rebuilding, I should say, our IT infrastructure. We've done a phenomenal job of really bringing us up to industry standards. And Dan was asked to take on that and get us to a point where we are today, along with the help of Chris and Josh. And now Dan has asked, does it make sense to go back to our previous organizational structure, whereby the IT manager reports to the managing director? And so I contemplated that. And we talked in depth about Dan and his, ultimately, he's going to retire at some point and leave us. He's actually eligible to retire in 2027, not that far away, January of 2027. So we wanted to think about succession. A lot of our supervisors in the organization have a backup, whereby there's someone that's working in a role that's very similar and is working potentially at a lot of the same job responsibilities. Unfortunately, we are small and mighty in the finance department. He has a great team in Tracy Bockwell and Jamie Kraus, who are the payroll clerk and finance clerk. However, we don't have a backup for Dan. So at some point in the near future, as we talked, it takes a long time to learn what we do, and it takes even longer to understand our very important finance and budgeting processes. All the reporting, road commissions are very unique in the finance world. It is our thought that Dan is going to need time to teach someone, and it's my intention at some point to bring back to the board, adding a position under Dan's tutelage to essentially learn that job. In the past, when Dan first hired on, he was an accountant, I believe. And Dan, if you wouldn't mind coming up, and he could also help me with that, because I was not around when Dan hired on. So, but I'm just giving you this history and just giving you a background of the conversation Dan and I had about that succession at some point when he gets ready to retire. Because what I'd like to do is have someone on board ready to be taught that position for about a year or two. And ultimately, when you're teaching someone, as you all know, have probably experienced, it takes away from your normal duties. And so we essentially need to lighten his load. And so his request and this conversation of planning for the future, it really culminated in this change in the org chart, whereby now Chris Winter would report to me, the managing director, and Dan would just, not just, but be our finance director as he was previously in 2018. Dan, why don't you elaborate if I missed anything?
Yeah. So Dan Ackerman, Director of Finance and IT, and Matt, you did a nice job summarizing things. Just a couple other things to point out to the board. When I was hired, the finance department was actually the finance director, the accountant, and 3 clerks. So there was actually 5 in the finance department. And my boss left in 1996, so this is a long time ago. And I took over for her. And it was, for a while, it was myself and 3 clerks. And we chose not to backfill that accountant position because we felt we could handle it by utilizing technology, had great staff. And then we had a clerk leave the finance department. I think it was early 2000s, maybe. Anyway, and I'm not sure exactly when that took place. And at the time, I kind of huddled with the clerical staff I had, and great employees. They said, you know what, I think we can do this with just the 3 of us. So again, you know, it's kind of bucking the trend a little bit. The trend is usually you add staff as we get busier and so on. We have, and the number of unfunded mandates this organization has experienced has been tremendous, as you can probably appreciate and imagine. But again, utilizing technology, having great staff, having good procedures in place, you know, I think we've managed, you know, just fine. And so when we had my performance appraisal, you know, I think Matt maybe was a little surprised by my potential retirement date, which that is just the earliest that I could retire. I don't necessarily plan on going that first day, of course. But when I leave here, I want to leave the organization in a good place. I want to do it justice as far as bringing in a professional replacement for me that is a good fit, that is up to speed on all the reporting requirements, which I don't see any of those lessening. If anything, probably more. That hopefully has a shared approach to our budget, and to, you know, fiscal responsibility is so important to me. And I want to make sure that eventually when I leave, obviously leave the organization in good fiscal position, but hopefully the replacement will have shared approaches, is a good fit as far as the finance department with the other directors. And I think you need a good year or 2, first of all, to find the right person. You know, they could interview well, but we want to make sure, again, they're a good fit, that they're catching on to everything. And again, that I can feel comfortable when I leave, that, you know, that things will just move forward. And obviously they'll have their own ideas and ways of running things, but hopefully, again, at its core, you know, a healthy fund balance is very important. You know, being someone that can be flexible and work with the other departments, because I think we have a good, you know, a good setup right now. And so, so that will definitely take some time, and we want to be mindful of that. And I want to be able to give my full attention to that person. You know, there's a lot of preliminary things I want to do to prepare. So Tracy and Jamie have job books. And so basically the goal is, if they were to, and it's nice, we don't say if somebody gets hit by a bus anymore, because that's so negative, but if Tracy were to win the lottery, so isn't that a nice positive way to say it? So instead of hit by a bus, so I'm trying to always talk positively about those things. If Tracy were to win the lottery and decide, you know, she no longer needed to work or wanted to do something else, the goal is to have somebody to hire somebody and for them to be able to hit the ground running. And so we have these job description books that have print screens and are constantly being updated to really aid the person, or in hiring somebody. Let's say there's in the interim, someone like myself having to maybe step in and fill in for a while. You have all the instructions right there, and it's not going to have every single thing, but as much as possible. And Tracy and Jamie have done an awesome job. We started from scratch, but we have a great list of procedures. And if things change or things are omitted, they do a great job. Make sure these are living, breathing documents, which is great, again, to bring somebody new or to help me out. Unfortunately, I don't really have something like that. And I do piecemeal, but I don't have it nearly as organized or as detailed as they do. And so I think that is imperative, again, to, for bringing somebody in to know when the municipal bonding form for the state of Michigan is due, when PA 202 is due, all these unfunded mandates, how to prepare for the year-end audit. And that's going to take a lot of time, but I think it is important. And I think I and the organization owes it to, the next person to make sure that you have something like that as a guide to assist them with that transition. So, I think that's going to be, a yeoman's effort to try to get to where Jamie and Tracy are. And then when you bring the person on board, I want to give them my full attention. Training somebody is kind of a job in itself. And so I think, I want to give 100% of my energies. And I told Matt, with the current setup, with me involved with IT, I just didn't feel I could do that justice. And, so again, 2018, when the organization asked me to take over IT, I had been the director of finance for over 20 years. So, a long time. And, obviously as Matt mentioned, we were in a situation, there's a lot of transition and turnover and so on. My IT experience is more like the school of hard knocks, I guess, or survival. So certainly I would help out when needed. And then Roy asked if I would, kind of lead the charge. And I know a lot of you were not commissioners at the time, but we had to, one of the first things I said is, and it's kind of counterintuitive to a finance person, is we need to spend some money. We need to update our hardware and our software. We need to bring the tools to the organization. And again, we're government, so we can't go crazy, but we need to bring the minimal tools to the organization to be able to allow people to do their work efficiently so that things work properly. And, and that's something that I'm very appreciative of the board, agreeing with me. And, it's like night and day as far as where we were to where we are. And again, as Matt mentioned, we needed to hire good professional IT folks. And, I told Chris yesterday, I feel fortunate that he decided to come work at the road commission. He is a professional and does such a great job. And then of course we brought Josh on board, and he also two professionals. I feel like our IT is in the best space it's been in my 30 years here by leaps and bounds. And it's those two gentlemen that are a large part of that, as well as the board's commitment to upgrading our hardware and our software. And so, I feel like it is time to make that change. Chris and Josh, they know what to do, and they do a great job. And again, so then my focus would be on finance, on, finding the right person and getting them up to speed. Because like I said, when I leave here, I want to leave the organization in a good place, both where we are fiscally and continuing hopefully for the next 30 plus years. So I don't know if there's any questions or anything, but
Question, Commissioner Smers and then Commissioner McCollum.
So congratulations on getting closer to retirement.
Thank you.
And the answer is no, you can't go.
Yeah, right.
So how long, and I don't want to screw up last names here, so how long before, in best guess, Tracy and Jamie are ready to go? Because we don't want to devastate the accounting department if they go at the same time,
Retirement?
yes.
Yes, so Tracy and Jamie, certainly they could leave tomorrow if they wanted to. But if you're talking when they could potentially retire from here, Tracy just told me the other day, I want to say about 20 years.
Okay.
She had, I mean, and you know, that maybe was like an eligibility sort of thing. And Jamie is newer than Tracy and younger, and so that would be
So it's a
20
fairly young
plus.
Couple, yeah, the clerks have a little ways. to go.
So right, they would have, you know, again, they could leave at any time, but I believe as far as minimal retirement, you know, I thought Tracy had said about 20 years, so.
Commissioner McCollum?
Yes, Dan, so, when the reports, are you going to still do the finance report, or is it going to be Chris?
So I'll do the finance report and really it's probably up to Chris and Matt as far as how they want to communicate, you know, anything with IT. And obviously it is important. It's an important area of our organization. And so I don't know, Matt, if you guys have determined who's giving the report or what method that would be, but I would assume there would still be something.
The plan is much like we did this morning with Nicole, there would be a working session topic. Chris will give the IT update. And if there's anything to bring under my report, so Chris would report to me, much like Nicole is the human resource manager and Tiffany is the communication manager. Chris, as the IT manager, will report to me. If there's things that need to be brought to the board's attention, that'll come through me.
Okay, thanks.
You bet.
This makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Thanks. I remember 6 years ago when all of this took place, and I can't thank you enough for
Yes.
being willing to shoulder that additional responsibility. That was all pre-pandemic,
Right.
right? So
Yes.
we went through all these IT upgrades and expansion of what we do online, the
Yes.
whole website issue. I mean, it's been an incredible journey that you've handled beautifully.
Yep.
Without complaint, as far as I know. But I want you to know it's appreciated how much you've agreed to take on, and you've done it so well.
Yeah.
And I hope this is a new day for you in terms of, okay, that's in a good place now. It's in good hands with the managing director. And you can focus on your shop
Yeah.
and bringing it up to the best standard. And your standard will be a high bar, Dan.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And I appreciate your comments, Barb, and really, I take very little credit. Chris and Josh get all the credit. And also, you know, getting a managed service provider to add that layer of support that really we didn't have. We had a managed service provider, but really didn't use them like we are now. But I think that's important because there are so many things in IT that, you know, Chris and Josh can't even, you know everything about that. So it's good to have professionals that are also assisting us with that. So that was a huge thing. And, you know, pre-pandemic, I'm glad you brought that up because really 2018, we kind of got a start as far as some of the changes. And I feel like, you know, we're not quite where we are now, but we had made tremendous improvements so that when the pandemic happened, we were able to tell staff, take your laptops,
Yeah.
work from home, work safely, and offer hybrid meetings, which so grateful that we still offer those. I know a lot of government went to just in person.
And we were
Which-
one of the first in the county, were we not?
I
Did
think
we
we
have
were.
the ability to do
Yes.
that?
Right. Tremendous effort by, you know, definitely Chris and Josh,
Yep.
Emily Kaiser at the time, and just really proud that we were able to conduct business at a high level. You know, we tried to not use the pandemic as an excuse for things not getting done, but that was because of the investments we made, because of the people we brought on board. And again, you know, I feel like we're in a really good spot, so.
Thanks again.
Yep.
Commissioner Yamas, did you?
So of all, yeah, great job. I think what you said though about you're not necessarily gonna leave them, but you're gonna create an MOP, a method of procedures or all the dates. Seems like that's so important. All that's in
Yes.
your head. It's
Right,
not written down. It
right.
kind of freaks me out a little. bit. Yeah. Be great to get down because you're so good at it and have so much information.
Yes. But it is time to get all that down on paper. We're doing some innovative things with training, which, operations department, they're utilizing the technology that we have and they're doing training videos, which is amazing. So, so really you want predecessors to succeed and, you know, that's certainly my goal and we're going to utilize technology and, you know, if you even think, oh, maybe the person doesn't need to know about it, document it, right? Just in case.
We'll get you a case of Post-it notes, Dan.
Yeah, there you go.
Start
That's right.
mapping this.
That's how I work. Yep.
Yeah.
Post-it note.
I would imagine you would be working with the communications director on how to get that on paper.
Yeah. Yep, for sure.
Anything else? Thank you.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan.
We are due for a break. Let's take a 10-minute break.
Okay.
Please be back by 10:30. I know that's more than 10 minutes, but if I say 10, we should be ready to go in 15. So let's give it a whirl. Back, it's 10:30 after our little break and we will move on. Mr. Managing Director.
Thank you, Chair. Right now we have a presentation on the Washtenaw County Water Resource Commissioner's Office Stormwater Grant Program. James Wheat is with us today and he's going to present where we're at with round 2 of the grants. Go ahead, James.
Hello, my name is James Hoy. I'm the civil engineer in the construction design department, the engineering department, of the Road Commission. Thank you again for having me here. This is a recap or an update to what I presented several months ago about the stormwater grant. So this is round 2. We have received word back from the water resources on all the awards and all of our applications. Just looking at the second slide here, here's a map of all the locations that were granted. Originally, we had 14 locations granted. Originally we had 15 locations granted. One of them had some issues in terms of funding with some of the townships. So we ended up splitting that funding into 2 additional culverts. We were very thankful that the township was very cooperative with us on making this grant work and also with the water resources on allowing us to allocate some of this granted funding into these additional culverts. The green dots here are the locations of all the culverts that were granted in this round 2. As you can see, it's pretty spread out compared to the first round. After we had such a good success with the first round, I think a lot of townships are very eager to get some grant and get some help with funding for a lot of these culvert replacements. And obviously we have a lot of culverts that needs to be repaired, replaced in the county. So this grant has definitely been a very helpful and very a great necessity to have in getting these projects performed.
James, just as an overview and background and a reminder, this grant was availed to the townships and James supported all of our townships with their applications. Then after the awards come out, the awards are determined by the Water Resource Commissioner's Office. Then we would enter into agreement with the townships to perform the work. And it was to improve stormwater quality, which ultimately a lot of projects got awarded for culvert replacement. So that's the background of what James is describing. And we're working with our townships to enter into an agreements and also prepare for all the permitting and to make this a reality for potentially next year, right?
That's the goal. That's the goal. So we have until the end of 2026 to get everything completed.
Commissioner McCollum.
Madam Chair, I answered my own question. Thank
Oh,
you.
well done.
And from this wonderful,
Awesome.
thank you.
Yeah, so let's go into a little bit more detail into the next slide. So here's a layout of all of our deadlines that we've had for the job. So the deadline for application was January of 2024. It was funny because we had a meeting with Water Resources and we kind of timed it to where it was a good timing where we can have all these discussed with the townships and also have townships consider it in their budget before allowing us to apply for these grants. An award date was February of 2024. Working with our operations department and a lot of help between all the staff and engineering as well. It's a big cooperative event where, you know, there are hands everywhere to try to get this in motion, just because there were so many culverts to do, so much coordination to happen. Sam, our clerk in engineering, you know, she did a bulk of the reaching out to the townships, and she did a great job in, you know, making sure that they realized, you know, what's on the line here, what can we do to get this money? And operations, we visited a total of 46 culverts for the ARPA rounds throughout the entire county. And we went through every one of them. We got eyes on it. We determined what kind of culvert we need to replace it with, what kind of additional work needed to be done, what kind of anything that needed to be done with this project. You know, operations had so much knowledge on how to do it and how to approach it. We are contracting some of these culverts out just because the volume load is very big for our own crews to complete everything. And some of these culverts are a little bit more intricate, a little bit more detailed. So we've determined all of that, and operations provided me a very good estimate to provide to all the townships to consider as we're providing this, as we're applying for this grant. So as you can see in the third bullet point, the estimated construction costs based on operations estimates of us doing it internally, and also several of the contracted estimates for culvert replacement, it ended up being about $3.2 million. And fortunately and unfortunately, we had so many applicants that the grant could not give us half of the construction costs. So they ended up awarding us about $1.09 million for the 16. We still got about a third of the cost covered by the grant, which is still a big relief to us in the township in terms of budget. Before, if we were to replace the culvert, it would be half and half between us and between the township. So I think this grant really helps out in funding all these culverts and all these needs we have in the county.
Did you have a question, Commissioner
Yes.
Green?
So who's got the burden of applying for the grant? The township?
The township does, yes.
Okay, because I see there are some townships that aren't represented, so they're just
Correct.
out.
So we provided, we went through every culvert that was rated a 4 or below, which is
Oh, I
a 4
see.
rating.
Okay,
And we've provided that information along with costs and all the information they need for application to every single township. And the townships determined if they wanted to apply for these culverts.
so who makes the decision as to who actually gets the award?
The Water Resources makes the decision on the award
I see.
itself. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're just technical assistants and then.
Yes. Yep. So we recommend it to each township because ultimately they have to fund a portion of the construction cost still. So
Right.
it's really, you know, if their budget allows and if they want to consider it, they would apply for the grant.
I see.
So take the one at the top of your list,
Hmm.
James. Estimated cost is 417,
Yes,
grant amount, a little less than 108.
right.
How is the difference covered?
So the remaining cost, about 300,000, will be
Mhm.
split evenly between us and the township.
Okay, that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, so if the township says at our budget, no, we're not gonna go there, what do we say?
We still have to keep it on our list, just as these are failing structures.
Uh-huh.
But at the point, they did not
They
consider.
go
it
on
for-
hold, kind of
Go on.
back burner until the money is
Correct,
available.
yes.
And the funds for this 1.09 million second round is out of the American Rescue Plan Act money that the Board of
Cor-
Commissioners received?
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
And it went through Water Resources because in the beginning, road commissions were not eligible, as I recall, for ARPA funds.
Right,
So this
right.
was a way to get some help on.
right.
some
And we technically are not eligible.
Matt's
to-
about to blow up over here. I'm
Right.
ignoring it.
We technically were not eligible to apply for the grants either. So the townships really had to bear the
Oh.
application itself.
Wait, say that again?
The
Road
road
commission
commission cannot apply for the grant money.
for
through
this
the-
particular grant?
Correct,
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
And so the township had to bear the responsibility of applying with
understood,
our information.
understood. So, Matt, you okay over there?
Doing great. Thank you, Chair. The Water Resource Commissioner, Evan Pratt, did
Mhm.
an absolute great job of advocating on the road commission and the township's behalf to address some of these
Yeah.
issues. And so he was able to convince the county board to set aside $2 million. This is the second and final round. I don't expect this grant, the ARPA money is gone or spent. I don't expect there to be another round. So this is very unique. The way we approached how we make up the difference between the construction amount and grant is based upon our local road matching program. Our local road matching program has a stipulation for culverts, particularly anything 5 foot or greater will match 50% as our budget allows. And we feel very confident that we can enter into agreements with all these townships to take advantage of this unique opportunity for grant funding that the Water Resource Commissioner's Office availed to us through the county board and the ARPA.
I'm sorry.
No.
Did any of these townships roll their matching money forward to
I don't think so.
do any of these projects?
No, I believe all the match is being spent on local roads. The culvert amounts, that 50% is aside from the match.
Okay,
It's in addition to,
okay.
Were
there questions this way? I had my head pointed that way. Mr. Yamas.
So all the townships are listed here. So those that are not listed chose not to participate, is that?
Yes, or they weren't granted,
Or they were in round one.
or they were in round one as well.
Okay,
Yeah, there were criterias where if you were awarded a grant in round one, your priority list in getting a grant would be lowered for round two.
okay.
So that could be the consideration, but all 20 townships have been approached by the road commission for both round one and round two.
Because this was round two,
This
kind
is
of like a
round two.
draft, kind of.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said, kind of like a draft.
Yeah, kind of close, yeah, lottery.
NFL
picks.
draft. It's round-
As
There
in-
is no
as
round
in
three, though.
football, not-
around
Yeah,
three.
no round three on.
No round three, okay.
For this particular pot of money, right? There are other grants.
I'm sorry, what was?
In the grant program, this one's unique because the vast amount of recipients are local roadways. So local roads, there aren't a lot of grant opportunities. So that was another advantage for our Water Resource Commissioner advocating so successfully for this program, is because local roads were by and large the recipient for this funding source.
Mr. Burkholz, are you about to explode there?
No, I'm good. I just wanted to provide some additional information. Aaron Burkholz, Assistant Director of Engineering. Speaking of the township and the road commission and our close coordination, I want to make sure to give credit to James. James took the lead on this in both rounds, in both round one and round two. He did an outstanding job of communicating with the townships, reaching out to each of them And again, one thing we did consider is where is the greatest need? So if there was any of the 20 townships that we didn't reach out to, it was because they were fortunate to not have local county road culverts that were of great need, as opposed to some of their neighboring townships. But ultimately, the decision was up to each of the townships, whether or not to pursue the funding. But James was there as a great resource to each of them that did decide to pursue it, providing them all the data that they needed to fill out the application to the Water Resources Commission. Based on the Water Resources Commission decisions about the grant awards, then there has to be a memorandum of understanding between the Water Resources Commission and the township. That has to be in place, and then there needs to be in place an agreement between the road commission and the township.
I think
us
there's
to
not enough
actually-
bureaucracy in that.
So, there's a couple steps involved because, in some cases, we are prepared to enter into an agreement with the township. The road commission is prepared, but the memorandum of understanding between the Water Resources Commission and the township is still being worked out. So, ultimately, that all will happen. We're certainly hopeful that that all will happen. And then we can work closely with our operations department to schedule the actual performance of the construction work and the replacement of these local county road culverts. Also, I'll say James had mentioned that as far as the road commission eligibility for this grant funding, as we spoke about it, as staff discussed it, and as we discussed it with Matt, we made a conscious decision as an agency that we were going to more so support the townships in pursuing this funding because of the great need on the local road system and the lack of funding sources for those. On the primary roads, again, we bear complete responsibility for the county primaries. We have more funding options for the county primaries. So while there's still a great need, there's greater opportunity than there exists on the local county roads. So, yep, just a couple other things to offer. And again, to thank you, James. You did a
Yeah,
great job.
great job. That's a lot of townships to talk to.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll also add, I heard from several supervisors thanking us, i.e. James, for the support in this grant program. Very successful. This year's budget is filled with culverts in round one. Next year's budget, you'll see a lot of these get put into the budget for next year. So
And
it's
these-
exciting work.
These funds have to be spent by the end of
2026.
26.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, so moving forward, like as Aaron mentioned, we will be going into an agreement with the township, with each
Mhm.
township for these culverts after they get their memorandum of understanding with the water resources. But we are currently working on, just trying to figure out and planning the whole process, because for all these culverts, we need to do design, we gotta get permits, we gotta meet all environmental requirements. And even though these projects are small, every step of those for the permitting is still a big task. So we're working through the intricacies of figuring all that out and scheduling all the construction for the following years. As Matt mentioned, a lot of these culverts will be replaced in 2024, 2025, and 2026. So it just really depends on the level of detail we have to put in the culvert on when we determine when they're going to be constructed.
And these are all in addition to the culverts, as you mentioned, Aaron, that
Correct.
are on the primaries.
Yeah, so these are just the local ones.
Yeah.
That the townships have applied for.
Because between 30 and 40 culverts thus far have been restored this year, I think. I've driven over several of them.
Yeah.
They look great, by the way, people.
And credit to the operations department.
Yeah, they're just,
Incredible year, the work that they've
Yep.
replaced so many culverts already this season. And James will touch on that as well, the number of culverts. The one thing I will point out, and Commissioner Fuller brought it up, the Warren Road culvert, that one, it's a very expensive replacement. That's Warren Road just west of Dixboro. The existing culvert, it's a large structural plate pipe arch culvert that's like 12.5 foot span.
Hmm.
And it's deteriorated over time. There's a lot of rust and loss of steel section along the flow line of the culvert. Basically where the water meets the air is where we often will see a culvert corrode, it'll start to rot out. That's got a weight restriction on it. I believe the weight restriction is 20 tons. So it's a
Mhm.
single unit weight restriction. That's a pretty severe restriction. We've talked to Ann Arbor Township for a couple of years now about that. And initially what we'd considered was, well, could we do some type of a repair to try to add some life to the culvert? We looked at that, but then this grant opportunity came about. And even though, based on the amount of funding available, Water Resources was not able to provide a grant that's 50% of the cost, still $107,500 is far better than $0,
Right.
where it would be purely the road commission and the township bearing that cost. So every little bit helps. And again, we appreciate each of the townships and their willingness to partner with us on this.
Mhm. And then off to my last slide. So we have had 5 culverts of the 28 total culverts that's been granted
Is that round one
completed.
and two?
from 1 and 2, yes. That has been completed to date. Like Aaron mentioned, operations has been under A game this summer so far. And we've been replacing culverts left and right here. So I'm hoping that we replace even more this year, take advantage of the great weather, and try to knock out as many of these culverts as possible. Understanding that, 28 culverts in 3 years is a lot. So we hope to be able to get all this fitted in and make good use of this grant money as well. And just to wrap this up, I just want to thank the board for supporting us, especially with the funding side on our end. Without the funding, without our participation, a lot of these culverts could sit weight restricted or closed eventually.
Mhm.
That would be a huge inconvenience to motorists. Our engineering staff, again, like I mentioned, a lot of engineering staff have had a hand in getting all this grant approved and pushed through. And then just all the township that's been working with us, they ultimately are the ones that submit the grant, and they have to be willing to consider it. Understandably, these are smaller items in their budget compared to other needs they might have. So we're very thankful that they're willing to cooperate with us on road needs and culvert replacements. So to wrap that up, thank you all again for your time. Are there any other questions?
Anything? No? Commissioner Green?
Just curious, the last picture was Ellsworth and where? Where is that located?
This is Ellsworth west of Gensley. We actually replaced 2 culverts on Ellsworth, west of Zeeb and west of Gensley this year. But this is the picture of the granted culvert, which is west of Gensley.
Okay. Thank you.
Are
And
these
I'll
all done
say-
with our own forces?
We did, yeah. So
Wow.
yeah, Ellsworth west of Gensley. I remember when I first started to work with James in the fall of 18. He had replaced a culvert working with Lodi Township on Gensley south of Ellsworth. So we'd replaced the culvert there in a partnership with the township. And then he wanted to do that one that was on Ellsworth just west of Gensley. It was just around the corner. And because of the cost, the township, they had to consider that part of it. They said, well, no, we can't pursue this right now. So I hope that was personally satisfying.
Yeah.
So, yeah, James, that we
Oh,
finally got around to
Finished the loop.
Ellsworth, finish the loop there, if you will. So, yeah.
Well done. Well done. Thank you,
you.
James. Thanks,
Thank you.
Aaron.
Sure.
Matt?
All right, next up, we have Madam Lape, Director of Operations. Talk a little bit about our gravel roads.
Near and dear to my heart.
Yeah. Adam Lake, Director of Operations. I'm gonna plug in here and like Ken went out to take a phone call, but I do have Jared Powers with me, one of the superintendents, so we'll kind of highlight them a little bit and probably have a few moments to even talk to them. I intentionally made a shorter slide deck so we can maybe get to point of conversation, and there's always good questions with this, so bring the superintendents up, give them some opportunity to speak as well.
Sure.
I am ready now. Thank you.
Come a long way since 2018, huh, Dan?
Yeah. Think you guys would like to see that. There we go. Oop. Go. Sorry about that. Perfect time to wait for Ken to get back. So really, I'll talk real quick here as we're working through setting the screens up a little bit. Tiffany, let me know if you need to, if it's my extension affecting it, but. So what we're gonna talk about on the local roads today, really just
We have hard
kind of,
copies.
yeah, some field conditions and then actual, let's try this. There we go, see if that helps. Let me exit that real quick. Really what the crew, faces every day. So as we'll kind of move into this here, I'll touch on that. So really my agenda is just talk about 4 things really, and that's going to develop in about 12 slides that we can ask some questions and kind of see perfect world scenarios and then reality, and then where we try to end up with some of our projects, also kind of highlighting how we do our maintenance as we talk about some of those as well. So we'll talk about some of our statistics, some of our routine maintenance practices, and then like I just said, kind of touch the ideal conditions, and then what we typically see on roads, on our road system. So our unpaved system is about 743 miles unpaved. You have some combination there of some unpaved subdivisions and things like that, but we're touching 700 miles of just straight line roads. So the connector roads getting us through the county. So we're busy.
Adam, on that statistic, how many of those 743 unpaved miles are primary?
I believe 8. No, I'm sorry.
80.
80. Yes,
80?
Sorry. Yes,
Okay,
80.
so the
Sorry.
vast number of that is local gravel roads. So
Yeah.
we have 80 miles of primary road roughly, but we have a lot of local gravel roads.
Yes, so we do keep pretty busy with our 6 crews that are directly related to the actual road maintenance day to day. And
The
so
gravel roads are
Oops.
what color on here?
gravel roads are probably gonna be closest to a gray color for you to see on the map.
Yeah, they're dashed. It's tough
Yeah.
to see on the screen.
Yeah, it's a little bit challenging to zoom into it. There you go. Thank you, Tiffany, that's perfect.
Oh.
It's our map, we're big enough county, it's hard to kind of put that on the slide deck. So if you do have specific questions, I can maybe help you a little further through the map.
We've got our paper maps we can
Yeah,
out as well.
yeah, so in the slide deck, I put a copy of the paper map, so we kind of correlate that and
Okay.
help navigate.
Because the green roads are the primary roads and then the gray is the local.
Okay.
And then if it's dashed, that's unpaved.
Yeah.
That's kind of the legend.
Okay.
Excuse me, would you say the dash was?
Unpaved.
Oh,
So
Commissioner Green?
just a question.
Mhm.
Why would there ever be an unpaved road on a primary road?
I don't know how they were all designated. It's all many, many years ago, probably long before any of us really, kind of worked at the agency. Likely the designator primary became part of, because it's moving and connecting a community together.
Yeah, it's a grid system. So essentially the MDOT established the definitions for primary and local. In the rural areas, it's every couple of miles, the east-west or north-south designate routes, or the ones that are connecting communities like Saline, Milan, Dexter, Chelsea. Those are kind of the Pontiac Trail is another one where it's not really on the grid system. It's not north, south, east, west. It's a diagonal. But ultimately, over time, they were all gravel to start, right? They were all gravel to start, so they were paved over time as funding was available, as the priority for funding was done. I get that question a lot. We got that in Linden Township, where why do we have so many gravel roads? Well, ultimately, it comes down to funding. And that's really the answer to your question is, at that time, they decided that there wasn't a desire or there wasn't funding to make it a paved route. So we do have 80 miles of primary roads, not necessarily, when you think about Washtenaw County, you think about more of the urbanized areas. It's more in the rural western Washtenaw County. And we do invest in those primary roads, much like we do our paved primaries.
Correct. And so that's when I responded initially with 8 miles. That was kind of some of our goal when we were just starting millage talks in 2016, like the first few years here. That was kind of Ken and I's goal as superintendents. We were trying to get 8 miles a year because we knew it'd take us 10 years to kind of get back around. So, you know, we keep things kind of simple with our goals. In operations, a little quicker and easier to accomplish those that way. So we do, you know, get a few miles every year. So we're keeping that system in good, reasonable shape. Which will take us into some of our other slides, which keeping the roads in reasonable condition is that routine maintenance. So that's, as you've seen this slide before in a lot of our presentations we've used. So it's the routine maintenance is really just that routine upkeep of the road system. So the delays, that inevitable failure that we run to a point, we see some road systems have just lost their base, become completely saturated, and we'll kind of have a few pictures of those here later as we talk. So this is a nice road bed we have there, nice limestone that we're scraping up there. So this is great. We love to see this when we have that kind of material, but the reality of it is, as we'll kind of cover, we don't always have that. So we have to, you know, work with what we have throughout the year. But so that slide we use here at the board level. We also use that at the local level to try to instruct and kind of educate, whether it be constituents or township officials as well. So the elected officials have some understanding of kind of what we face. So that's why today's going to have a combination of quite a few of our slides we've used before. The road maintenance itself, the goal is to reset the crown of the road. So here you see our grader working in one of District 1 subdivisions, where you really get into the reality of, and I'll say that a lot in this little presentation, is just the reality of what you actually have in the field. It's much narrower than what a typical road grade would be set at, you know, 24 feet wide at least. This is obviously not that. So you see on the right side of the picture, there's kind of a collection of material there. We refer to that as the windrow. What the operator is trying to do is actually set that into the middle of the road, but roads that are that narrow, and we have this frequently throughout the county, we have to work one extra round essentially to kind of move that windrow back to the middle to try to establish that crown that we referred to. Same concept as the paved roads that we have. We want to crown about 2 or 3% to actually allow that water to find its way to the ditches. Unfortunately, in some areas we don't have ditches, so we try to really have a place to store it, is essentially what we work with in the field from day to day. So our skilled staff really expedites this process. We do have a cool little gauge, like a kind of a little parabolic curve. It's really just a bubble level that shows the slope of the road. Jared Powers, one of our superintendents, is one of our skilled operators as well, when he's had his time in the field. And most of our operators are skilled enough that they can sense that, like they don't even need to look at that. That's why it really expedites this with all our skilled operators that we have. It'd be great if we had 30 graders, but we have 11. So we have 11 people out, you know, really any time throughout this proper time throughout the season. So after the spring, where the roads have kind of reestablished and dried out a bit, at performing this type of maintenance. So they really make it fast for us. They keep it moving. But the main thing is to get, as we start with every project and every maintenance activity we do, is to keep the water out or off of the road surface, whether it be from a construction project, an engineering department, all the way to just our daily routine maintenance. Our goal is to get the water away from us in every activity that we perform. So this is what we refer to as stone patching. So right off the bat, I'll kind of touch on that it's commonly misunderstood that we're just spreading some stones, just kind of throwing them all over and they turn into marbles and go away. We routinely answer this question because the goal of stone patching is actually to just work one segment, which is usually at the bottom of the hill. Ken and I were talking this morning, Ken Harris, the other superintendent, talking this morning, you know, we always get the conversation that why are it just at the bottom of the hill? Well, the water wants to run down that hill and it routinely wants to wash out at the bottom of the hill. So a lot of our stone patching repairs would be performed in that area to try to fill those washouts, maybe cut out the washout, which takes us to the picture that you see in your slide deck, what we refer to as cutting in a repair. What we do is use that grader because our newer trucks can't do this like they historically used to. We used to have a lot of down pressure on our trucks and they could physically cut the road with the scraper blades. We reserve that for our graders now. It's a little easier on the piece of equipment. It's also just set up a little differently, has different grade control to establish that crown again without just cutting a big hole out of the road. So what they do is try to cut that out so you can correlate that to pothole patching on a paved road. We're just trying to fill a hole, but you have to have a clean hole before you start putting the material into it. So ideally, you try to find to some type of stable base by cutting out the really bad material at that point and spreading just that residual sediment down further on the road because you can spread it out over, you know, a couple 100 feet. That'll eliminate that issue. It can kind of just settle in with the other material. Then we spread stone on top of that and shape that. What that does is just prevent just a measure in the middle, basically, to get us to the next surface maintenance. Same concept on the paved road. We put that pothole patch in the road, and that's just to get us to the next job, next time we can repave that road surface. A little more simplified with unpaved maintenance because we're going to be back a lot sooner than, you know, 6-7 years with a paved road, and it's a little bit cheaper to do it that way. But so, like I say, it's often confused because constituents, we have to, you know, reinforce this quite often with the constituents and township officials that we want to make sure they understand that we're just doing something in between to get us back to maintenance, just literally filling the hole with the stones that'll be tied in at another time when we actually can reset the whole road during our actual dust control and grading operations. So obviously you see at the end, we apply the aggregate, we spread it, and then we move on to the next spot. Now, Ken highlights a really, really good talking point here with the fact that, you know, you're going to spend 2 hours with one load of material in a truck. And so you may only get 3 or 4 segments done in a day with just one truck. So you kind of multiply that or divide that throughout all the roads and, you know, only 6 trucks in per facility. And so there's a lot of patching that could be done, but it's impossible to do that through the whole length of a road system. So that's why we pick out the worst areas, the low-lying areas, the wet spots at the bottom of the hills to really perform our stone patching. Especially crucial to perform that in the springtime because the remainder of the road system is saturated, as we've talked about quite frequently, where we just have to let it reset and kind of restabilize itself so it can support the weight of our equipment, especially our graders, in trying to cut that road so we don't run the risk of the term that I use, turning the road over and bringing all that mud and saturated material to the top. So stone patching really keeps us in line, so to speak, every springtime.
Commissioner McCollum.
Yes, Adam, what are these 3 levels? I know the top is like stone or.
Yeah, so in theoretically, that would be the grade. And then you have what's referred to in a lot of engineering would be like the subgrade. So that would just.
That white part?
Correct. Yeah, the middle layer there. And then you have just well, I guess below grade there would be just your natural, whether it be sand, rock, clay in most cases. Until you get to kind of the west side of the county, we have some decent sand. So we have good bed down there to set this stuff on, but in theory, that's what you would see. So if it was a paved road, that'd be your pavement, so your asphalt, your limestone, and then clay or whatever the road base was built on top. So after we perform a little bit of maintenance and the season is proper, which now we're in that time of season, as you've probably seen some of the social media posts from Tiffany's team, we start looking to the dust suppression side of our routine maintenance activity. So we still perform stone patching if necessary, but most times the stone patching is already performed. And then we're coming back to actually try to reset that road. So we're going to scrape it up, pull up a few inches of material, bring that windrow into the middle as we saw 3 slides ago, and then fan that material out And then we apply with our tankers, the liquid brine that we have. So that mineral well brine that we produce here in the county through our well and that we are provided by a vendor that we purchase the material from. So we apply that about 1,700 gallons per lane mile, or excuse me, per mile. And the goal, I say 1,700 gallons because we try to work within some of Eagle's, I'll say pre-limitations because it hasn't been maybe put into fully enacted yet, but there are some working restrictions and some environmental, awareness that you have to have. So for the past 3 or 4 years, we've been kind of practicing at that level. So when restrictions do find their way, we're already working within those restrictions. And quite frankly, when you start getting closer to 2,000 gallons a mile, and Ken and Jared can even attest to this, you really start running a risk of the material actually just running off the road, and it'd be more like a rainstorm, which is detrimental to our roads, as opposed to a nice saturating rain that you try to, replicate by adding this dust suppression material. So it's hydroscopic. It draws the nighttime dew, any little bit of moisture that the road can get, that sodium, magnesium, and chloride, calcium that's in there, really tries to draw that moisture in and hang on to it. So you can really see this is something we use even in all the way back to Nicole's presentation for onboarding. We use this exact slide, word for word in the same picture to really delineate the differences of what a road that's saturated and has some moisture in it of the ideal scenario compared to what it looks like on the just outside ribbons there where it's essentially white limestone. That's just dust. And then it goes up in fugitive dust, which is the fines that we like to keep our roads tight together. So really good picture that depicts that. For operations team, we can talk a little more specific. That truck would have went down each lane in theory. So let's say east and west, well, this road's going north and south. So they would have gone north and south. And then this last pass would have been like at a partial or half rate, just right down the middle of the road to try to really concentrate that moisture right in the middle. So a little bit of mathematics, mainly just off of the controller in the truck and then the speed of the truck and the gearing. The operator makes all those decisions and kind of does that math, picks his choice on how he wants to do it, either more material out of the pump at a higher speed or slower, less material out of the pump, slower ground speed. So it's really giving them the opportunity because you add in topography. Sometimes you don't have a choice. You're not going to go any faster than you want to go. So this is Barb, this is Bridgewater, the northern end of Bridgewater Township.
Commissioner Green.
Yeah. So, approximately how long does the dust control application last?
So it really depends on what type of season you're having. And what I mean by that is if you're not getting, if it's just dry heat, no humidity, you'll be able to get a month and a half max. You'll see signs of it just basically getting wore off, going away, not as effective within a month. But if you have a couple days of rain here and there, and I don't mean rainstorms, just nice soaking rains, overnight kind of rains, and then enough humidity at night, enough dew at night, you could stretch a dust control application for 2 months if you needed to. And the only reason we have a little bit of understanding of that is when some townships haven't really established their asset management and some of the changes we made here in the past few years where we used to have townships pay for that service. So we would partner with them for some of their matching funds or our contribution would be for dust suppression. Some of them couldn't afford the 3 rounds that we would like to, apply a year. So we'd have to do 1.5, 2, where we would really have to stretch that. So if you had good moisture in the air, then you can stretch out a little further. But if it's very dry, like something like this, if we were in Arizona, wouldn't last very long at all because it's the atmosphere is just too dry. And so it just doesn't give it any time to get some moisture to kind of rejuvenate that and really hold on to those fines.
Adam, so each district foreman is responsible for keeping
Yeah.
track of conditions, because the conditions may vary even throughout the county, and traffic volume. So traffic volumes is another
Yeah.
contributing factor of how long it will last.
Yeah, it's all taken into account, it starts kind of with the superintendents of, plans, what type of weather we have coming, because sometimes it may be more beneficial for us to work Friday and Saturday to do dust control because it's going to rain throughout the week. And we can capitalize on the moisture we're going to get during the week, because if you can have a good moisture content on the road before you grade it and then apply the dust suppression material to it, you can make that last even longer. So it's really balancing the season and kind of what you're seeing current weather.
Yeah, it's important to note if you're already have the cloud of dust, it's too late,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So there's, the moisture is not there, the dust control, the brine is gone.
Yeah,
So
just
it
ignore
really,
it goes away.
we need the moisture in the road, then you're essentially capturing it and putting the brine down and you're capping it and hopefully getting that crust. It
Yep.
looks like a crust is often referred to as.
Yeah, yeah, it actually, yeah. We, like I say, nice simple terms, so crust, dry, hard, you know, we don't really overcomplicate it because we have so many bodies out there. We don't want to have all these scientific, wait, I'll try this or look at that, you know, getting real sciencey. We keep it very simplified. Do we have moisture? You know, it's kind of like a yes or no starting point. And then is it gonna rain tomorrow, the next day, 3 days out, or is it just a light percentage? And it kind of sets us on where do we go and when do we perform this maintenance?
So if it's only good for, I'm sorry,
No,
Madam
finish,
Chair.
finish, go ahead.
Mhm.
If it's only good for a month and a half, then who pays for the reapplication?
Who pays for it?
Right.
Well, now we've made that change 2 years ago, that's all in-house, that's all maintenance costs now. So with the Eagle guidelines that we try to work with under, you can spray about 7,500 gallons per year per mile. So in theory, we could do 3 rounds without
Okay.
being any risk of, you know, oversaturation or runoff. So that gives us a little bit of cushion where on some roads, we could even do a 4th application if we had to. But that's all a maintenance cost. That would be just like the road, let's say we pothole patched it this week and it rained and we have to go back out in 2 weeks. That's just a part of a cost of our doing business. Yeah. Jared Powers?
I just wanted to
Assistant
say,
Superintendent?
to tie into that, the best thing we ever did, in my opinion, was take over the dust control, because that gives us the option of how many rounds we're gonna make on a road. We had some roads last year, for example, we did one time and we never went back and touched them again. It really depends on the weather. There are a lot of variables, weather, the amount of traffic, what materials on that road, all sorts of things like that. But that gives us the option of, because when we had the township pay for it, we had to go give them 2 or 3 rounds of dust control. That's what you did, because that's what they paid for. But it made no sense to tear up a perfectly good road that was already set and in good shape, to tear it up, because then if it did rain, it'll go back and be worse than what it was before. So this gives us the option of deciding, does that road really need it or not? Because if not, we're gonna leave it alone because it's in good shape. We're not getting any complaints about it.
Yeah.
And then obviously every pass we take, every road is different, but just so you guys know how much of a process it is when we're scraping a road with a grader. That grader is going up, we'll take that whatever mile section, you know, from this crossroad to this crossroad. That grader's going up and down the road, approximately 5 different swipes each side. So you're going down and back twice to make a windrow. And then you're gonna fan that windrow out, then you're gonna fan each side out to make your crown. So that grader's going back and forth a lot on that. It's not just, you're not just going down, making a windrow and then fanning it out. You're making 5 different passes on that, and then the truck's coming behind it. So it's quite a process to get the road to look like that. So-
Yeah, and that's, you know, having that, you know,
That's-
Jared makes a good
That's
point.
pretty.
Well, yeah, that is.
That's a
wonderful.
perfect road right there. That's
Yeah.
what you want. That was that.
That is, yeah, that is
They don't all
beautiful.
look like that.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So-
But yeah, so that's, you know, and that's even why, thank you, Jared, and
I
that's
haven't
even
forgotten
why
it, Jeff.
a lot of times, you know, every year we want to buy 1 or 2 graders. Because you start multiplying those trips and those hours, and we quickly reach that 10,000 hour threshold that I talk about frequently
Yeah.
when we talk about equipment purchasing. And so Jared's spent a few hours in those, but he really does highlight that point that Ken and Jared can now control our destiny with dust control applications, because we can make the decision when we need to be out on the road as opposed to just a billing cycle. And we've kind of highlighted that at the beginning of last year, maybe just before you came on the board, Jeff, where it really gave us that control. That was the real push why we wanted to make that change, because we wanted to be performing the maintenance at the right time. You know, that's a key word, a key phrase that we use quite frequently, especially talking about the millage. Right project, right fix at the right time. That's really where dust control, all the way down to our simple maintenances, we have to decide the right time, because you can go out and just pulverize all the nice stones you have, because you're just forcing it when it's nice, densely compact like that, just because you might have to get a billing cycle done, where it's better just to let it have some moisture, grade it slower, it's less strain on our equipment, less fuel, less tires. So there's a lot of contributing factors that it actually, in theory, we're saving our equipment by controlling our destiny. So it's very good, but yes, thank you, Jared. That's.
Commissioner Smers, you had a question or
Yeah.
comment?
It's a question. in a perfect world, how long should it take for the stuff to dry before it's, you mentioned saturating the road too much. How long should it take before it's not gonna splash or get on cars?
Not very long.
It doesn't
It's
take
perfect
long at
world.
all.
If you have the right sunny, dry weather and the road, good material there, it soaks it in a matter of, I mean, half an hour, it's
Yeah.
perfect.
It'll, like, this would have been.
It depends on
done in
shade,
minutes.
if it's shady, if you get a road that has a lot of canopy, and a lot of fines, it could stay softer longer, obviously. You get a road like that, though, that's wide open sunshine, it doesn't take very long.
Yeah, in theory, it kind of cures quickly.
Okay.
Even if you come all the way to the science of it, how they kind of coached us when we all learned this. They actually recommend watering before because it's so hydroscopic that it just draws right down there. Surface tension and things that are well beyond my skill set. But it really actually, a little bit of moisture helps too. But yeah, so we're talking minutes before you're back to just a dust-free road.
You're pretty quiet, Ken. You have anything to add?
No, I mean, I guess I'm gonna say something.
You're here, Mr. Harris.
Yeah, so,
Right?
well, and you'll
You
get to
see
speak
Adam
with,
twice a month.
yeah, you'll get to speak. Ken Harris is our superintendent of maintenance. So Ken and I were superintendents together here. Both of us been here about 10 years, but you'll get to hear more of Ken also because I'd like to come back next year and talk even maybe more this year, talk about our SEALCO program, which he is kind of our guru when it comes to that. So, but anyways, Ken Harris, have at it, local.
Yeah,
road
no, I think when
maintenance.
we doing a dust control and having us be able to take it over. I mean, historically, a road would last 10 years and we would flip it over 3 times a year. So that means that stone was getting moved 30 times in 10 years. And we all know limestone breaks down a lot the more we move it. So be able to have that control, like Jared said, flipping that road 1 time to perform dust control, that's going to extend the life of that roadway a little bit longer by not having to continually turn it up, raking the stone up. So I think that's been a huge benefit. And even some of these roads, if we can dust control 2 or 3 times a year, it's going to be a lot more beneficial for us the way we're handling it now compared to ways in the past. So.
And that's a good point. I mean, Ken makes, when him and I were superintendents a few years ago, we tried to apply, this was prior to kind of eagle restrictions, guidelines kind of being on the radar. We would try to scrape and brine the primary segments of unpaved roads 4 times a year. And we found we were just pulverizing the stones. So the stones would start, good size, about the size of maybe a knuckle or two, and they would just be sand powder by the end of the year. And so we had primary roads now no better than a local road, and we have the funding to take care of the primary road system. So that was a blessing in disguise with some of this program finding its way. And then, fast forward 5-6 years later to now, where we can really control that is it's instrumental in what they do in our schedule as well.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
Thank you.
Somebody else sketch on Jared. We don't all know Jared.
Oh, yeah. So Mr. Powers,
Mr. Powers.
Mr.
I'm
Powers,
sorry,
yes, Mr. Powers is how, he doesn't need a microphone, so we'll be good. Yeah, so Jared worked on our District 1 crew was there actually when I started, but started his career as light truck driver. Come on, he's got some good stories. So he's cut trees for us. He's done all kinds of cool stuff, but it's another from the ground up experience level, which is what makes our team really impactful and strong in the right ways. Most of us started, we started inspecting jobs like Ken did. Jared and I were basically summer helpers and found our way through. So it really makes us a little more powerful. We have some good field understanding, but Mr. Powers.
I started on a tree crew and heavy equipment crew,
Really?
and then I moved to state trunk line. I was on state trunk line until they gave up the mowing contract. And then I decided I wanted to try to run, I would like to run the grader and stuff, so I bid to yard 1 when there was an opening there for District 1. I was there and then I became a group leader there, and then there was actually an opening in our engineering department up front here for be a weighmaster and one of the inspectors for permits. And I decided to take that at the time, for scheduling wise with my wife and her job and that sort of stuff. It made more sense. So I did that. And then I applied for this job and got this one. So I've kind of seen all sorts of things and sides of this whole organization as far as what we have to do. And so it works out really well. So
How long you been with us?
been going on 14 years.
And you, Ken?
This would be year 10.
Yeah, Ken and I both about 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started in 2010, so.
Thank you, Mr. Powers.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jared. Yeah, so as I say, I mean, we are very, very skilled group. We're very lucky to have the experience that we've had, but you know, it really, a lot of this starts with, it's nothing I drive. It's what those two kind of drive and schedule and coordinate with other departments and all the way to our foremen, our operators, our, you know, truck drivers, all the way down to our summer helpers that help us, you know, achieve these programs that we put on. We're very powerful in our small group. So we appreciate everybody's efforts. So, but it does start somewhere, and these two gentlemen kind of drive that for us. So we're thankful for that. Back to the slide deck. So back to ideal now. So here's an ideal cross section of a road. This is actually from Pete Torola's presentation that was given at Linden Township last fall. So we gathered some of the slides from his stuff, so I could use kind of ideal scenario, worst case scenario, but then, you know, wrap in a little bit of kind of our field experience and what we can get worst case and best case scenario. So as you kind of see reading this, I'll save you the heartache. Really, it's that crown in ditching or drainage, at least on each side of the road. This is perfect world. And you can see the roads far above the bottom of the ditch, you know, a few feet above the bottom of the ditch in theory. Obviously, we know we don't have that in most cases. So that's where our goal is always to get to perfect scenario. Sometimes we have to make adjustments and get best case scenario. And that's where our staff is really skilled at doing that, because unfortunately, we have to do that more often than we go out to a brand new road segment that's, you know, free of trees, ditches on each side, you know, 2 foot above the ditch line. That doesn't quite exist for us in most cases, not even on our primary system, excuse me. So we really have to work with what we're given. And that's where the skill set comes in with the superintendents, they form, and the group leaders, our operators that have that skill to really figure out what they do in what segment, know the soils they're working with. Because for example, the west side of the county has some relatively decent sand base, which actually helps sometimes. It's a little more challenging to keep the road to sit still. And what I mean by that is not move and get all bumpy, but it's nice when it's wet, you can go over there and work because the water's going to drain through it. So it's kind of it's a devil in the detail, I guess. But so we have some areas where we can work when it's saturated in the springtime. So that's why you see us usually start scraping from the west side kind of towards the east side because we have a lot more limestone on the east side of the county. So here is about as close as we can get. This is Webster Township, about as close as we get to a perfect world scenario. And quite frankly, this may even beat Jared in the grader. I don't know when we took this picture, but it's either, I think it's Merrill at the northern end.
Yeah, probably.
So this very well might be Jared in the grader from that year. Now here, this is not any of our roads. It's not a road segment here in Washtenaw. This is part of the presentation to kind of educate the vast difference that you see in the fields. This would be considered fully saturated. This would be that concept that I speak about in the springtime, because you see a little bit of snow melt there still, where we routinely explain to whether it be constituents, township elected officials, our internal staff alone, this is the segment you get if you go out and start working a road before it's truly thawed and found its way back to kind of calming down and a little bit more stability. Because you see all those tracks made there where they're pieces of their equipment trying to make it better. And then you see on the left side of the photo, there's some grass there before the ditch actually should be. And so you come back to the fact, like the routine maintenance, we didn't get all the berm off. And so that would have been the impact there, because now the water's trapped and saturated the whole grade width. So the whole width of the road. And as soon as you touch it with a piece of heavy equipment on that left side of the photo, you drop down in there, and now you've in theory turned over that road. And so now all the not so good organic stuff and leftover dirt, soils, whatever underneath your limestone, or in this case, it's probably gravel, is now up top, and all your good stuff is just smushed down to the bottom, for the lack of a better term. So this is why we're especially sensitive in the spring to let things thaw, kind of stabilize, dry themselves out before we start maintenance. We'd rather have a muddy road than a road that's nearly impassable or floating. There's some good videos that Pete used during one of the presentations where you could physically see somebody's feet just floating as they walked. And it's great that the water's not on the road, but it's underneath you, and it's not going to dry for months at a time without you physically cutting it. That's why you see a lot of the agricultural groups, farmers will go out and rip their fields very, very deep and intentionally like open it up and let it breathe. you can't do that to the road surface because you have to be able to try to get traffic across it. So we don't want that type of field condition, but it is very good and very impactful screen that we like to use as a little bit of an education point. So here's what we typically see, where we have some trees in the ditch line. The road is now dropped below the grade of the ditch, where we have to do some project work to really get ourselves up and going, where this is far beyond a maintenance activity. That's where we start partnering with the townships. We make these presentations annually to the township and kind of help them with their asset management plan. This road bed, this road layout, this picture, so to speak, it's less than what it used to be. We are moving the needle with townships. Their asset management plans are moving forward, and it's been a lift with the better part of 30, 40 people trying to just educate and advocate on the behalf of, you really should have an asset management plan. You should really, try to establish some type of funding, whether it be a little bit of funding, a lot of funding, your choice is your choice at the township board level is kind of how we use that conversation point with them. So these pictures are less than what they used to be, where we're at least getting back to roads within that 5 to 8 year range and at least resurfacing it. Or we refer to it as pulling the berm. What that would be is removing a little bit of dirt on the left side of the screen at the ditch by the tree there that's standing. If you were in theory were to remove that berm, you would be able to get some of the water to go over there, or at least sit off the roadway. It's a little bit more efficient. It's cheaper to do if the township isn't able to afford the stones right at that moment. You're able to at least maybe do the drainage work, then add the stone a year after. So that's why you see some of our township agreements focus just on drainage. And then all of a sudden the next year will be the same road segment, but then we'll add some limestone to it. So that's how we try to balance that, because some townships just don't have, the reality of it is they don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to do all this work every single year and get all their roads brought back to standard. So we try to work with them as best we can. So we bit and piece it together if we have to. And that's really, that final point is really just the continued education. It's never ending. Election cycle, new questions, new examples pop up every year. You just keep building and keep coaching. That's why it's so easy for us to speak on things like that, because we say them routinely, at least practice them 20 times a year. That's for sure.
Yep.
With the 20 townships, but we really do rehearse this throughout the year, and our foremen are great with it because in their own words, and they developed such a good trusting bond with most of the supervisors, or like a road liaison, that they're the ones really pushing that and continuing the conversation. So we kind of do a little bit of education point, and then the foremen and group leaders are just taking it and keeping it constant with these townships. And that's how we've benefited from that the most, because then when it comes time for Ken, Jared, and I to really ask for funding, they're at least aware of some of the issues they may be facing and what they have to do to get it back to a standard for them that's acceptable. And so here's another kind of reality contrast. I believe this is a Dexter Township. So you see how the road is just narrow and the grader is over where you would ideally have a ditch. And that's an embankment there. So what that operator is doing is has that blade turned very sharply, which might be kind of hard to see. And if you have questions, I can explain it to you offline a little bit. But what that operator is trying to do is make a relatively steep cut over on the side of the ditch. So over on the side of the shoulder. And what that's doing is creating a little bit of like a V notch. Sometimes we call it like that. It gets all our limestone back on the road. And then it creates just a little area, even if it's only 6 or 8 inches wide, for water to find its way and to kind of be stored over there. It's not being conveyed like we'd like it to, but you can see there's some topography that would be helping us. So we just have to get the water off the road. The earth will at least move it down towards probably some bit of like a cross pipe or something that's down there a little further behind the grader, because there's a little bit of grade on that picture there. So that's real world. That's kind of what we work with, every day, but it comes back to our real skilled staff that they're able to kind of keep this together. So we're kind of spoiled in this area because it's relatively new limestone that they're cutting on here. So this is project based as opposed to maintenance based, but it was a good picture to really show when we get constrained by the earth itself. No township or even our road commission can afford to remove all that on the shoulder there and make a ditch there. You'd be into utilities and thousands of tons of material would have to come out of there. So it would not be cost effective. So we work with what we've been given.
Any questions for Adam? Nice
Right.
job.
Thank you.
Nice job. Thank you, Adam.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Mr. Powers.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Washtenaw, what's next?
I think that exhausts our agenda for this morning.
Okay. All right, if there's nothing else to come before us during this working session, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion.
Support.
If you would, please, Aaron.
Commissioner Joanne McCullum,
Yes.
Commissioner Rod Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Gloria Yamas.
Yes.
Commissioner Jeff Smurs.
Yes.
And Commissioner Burt Fuller.
Yes, our working session is adjourned. See everybody at 1 o'clock.